Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the workshop, City of Griffin Board of Commissioners, December 8, 2020. Start off by discussing a request for an alternate concept for the current approved design for the East Solomon Street intersection. Transportation Planning Consultant Ryan Upson will address, and others. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
I was asked to look at the Solomon improvements to look at revising those somewhat. And so we have gotten with the engineer who was hired to do this project, Ethan Lineback, to look at some options. Ms. Flowers-Taylor and Ms. Flowers asked us to look at this for the community in that area and potential impacts of traffic backing up or traffic having some problems. So let's see. Can you pull that first?
You ready, Brian?
Yeah, if you will, pull the first one up. Okay. That one is fine. Okay, this is the, as you remember, we have been going through a concept phase for the last 2 years with DOT with this project. It's fairly complicated. It's got a lot of utilities. It's got the railroad, of course, and it's got the multiple tie-in intersections that we're trying to modify. So what you see on the screen is the approved concept from GDOT. And it goes from the western side of Solomon and crosses the railroad track on the Solomon side and then ties in to a four-way stop at Solomon and Jackson. And then you see the street going to the bottom. That is a new street that will tie Spalding Street into that intersection. So Spalding Street will be basically a cul-de-sac. It won't be a through street across the railroad tracks. It will, you come like you're coming from Ambucks, you'll turn right on that new street, come up to a four-way stop, then you'll take a left on Solomon Street and head into town, and vice versa as you leave. So there was some concern about that just being a bottleneck. And so I went back to the engineers and I asked them for some options on how we could modify this plan. Now, bear in mind, we haven't gone to GDOT to see what their process is going to be, because obviously we have an approved concept. We have design underway under this concept. And so we don't know what pushback they're going to do, but we went ahead and tried to find some options so that we could look at them. So could you look at the next one? Yep. So they have they've come back with a plan that is similar to the other one, except you see the new road that we're showing has more of a sweeping effect rather than a T intersection. It sweeps in, and then there's a roundabout instead of a four-way stop. So traffic moves. There's no real stopping there. So it doesn't impact the Solomon Street side of this. It's pretty much the same design. It does impact more properties. There's about 4 more properties that would be impacted in some way, whether it's a complete purchase or partial purchase, because the roundabout is a much bigger right of way than the original four-way stop concept. So if you put the cost estimate up, so they did a cost estimate. The original construction cost for the approved concept was $5.742 million, of which it's about a 20% city contribution, 80% GDOT. there's a potential of us saving $1.8 million on this original concept because we may be able to miss the transmission lines that go on Solomon Street. Originally, we had anticipated that those would have to be replaced, but if we can miss those and not impact them, we could save $1.8 million on this project. The second concept this new concept is going to add an additional $1.5 million in construction costs to the original cost estimate. So making that potentially $7.28 million project. Now, there's still an opportunity to save the 1.8, but it would be for both projects if we're able to save it. So we're either going to be 5.7 minus 1.8 or 7.2 minus 1.8. So it's $1.5 million more any way we look at it.
Can I interject?
Sure.
Just for some perspective. So I don't know, maybe like at the beginning of November, I sat down with Mr. Walker just to kind of get an understanding of how, some of the thought processes behind the design. Can you go back to the original? Yes. And so he gave me the information that he could, but there was some stuff that he was like, well, I'm not exactly sure what the thought process was. So that's how I ended up talking to Brian, was just wanting to really understand, because my concern is that if you guys are looking at this map, at the part where they, on the far right side of the screen, where there's the intersection and the added street, that changes drastically, like the dynamic of traffic in that neighborhood. And beyond that intersection is nothing but residential for several blocks between there and 155. If you're not really familiar with where this is, the large green area at the top part of the screen is the field adjacent to where the UPS facility is. So we're talking about the length from UPS on 155 to the next street over on Solomon Street. There's already traffic issues in this area aside from where the railroad track is. So if you continue down Solomon Street, which obviously that's the street that I live on, so I'll just say that because I'm not directly impacted by this in terms of property adjustment or anything, but I will be impacted by the amount of traffic that will be dispersed down that street. The next intersection down is Little Street that already cannot accommodate 2 cars in the intersection at one time. What is labeled on here as Spalding Street, which is on the bottom right corner, is also High Falls Road. Spalding Street turns into High Falls Road. So if you're familiar with that, that is a main thoroughfare from town out towards 16 or out towards anywhere in that direction. The concept that's in place now is going to cut Spalding Street off. So there will be no more coming up High Falls Road to get into town, just like on a straight shot. You're gonna have to make this turn right here at the new intersection. I'll also preface this by saying, clearly I'm not an expert in any of this. I don't have any actual logistical knowledge of how any of this stuff works. I am, however, a person who lives in this neighborhood and thinks that as it is currently designed, it will be more impactful to the residents in the neighborhoods around it than we assume just from looking at a map. So I did ask if there were some alternatives. I am very aware that we are well into the design standpoint of it. But what kind of comes to mind for me is we were well into the design and implementation of these planners out here on Hill Street that we had to stop and go back and redesign, because even though they had been approved and had already been put into place, it was found that in actual use, they were not as practical as we thought they were. So my concern is that the neighborhoods behind us are not thoroughfares. It's a very just kind of closet area. The traffic that's on those streets is primarily the traffic of residents. in that if there is a train in this intersection, when these people don't want to be stuck at this intersection, they're going to disperse onto those residential streets to get out of it. And this little street that is going to be new, that it will back up. And at some point, because the train is going to come through and it comes through several times a day, there's still now only going to be one way across the railroad tracks, which is going to be Solomon Street. So, those were my concerns when I went to him. I certainly don't want to devalue any of the work that's been done already. And I would say that I'm somewhat late to the party with my concerns, and I certainly acknowledge that. But one of the things that I said to Brian was, it feels to me like sometimes how we feel like as the government, whatever we say is right is the best thing for people, and we make changes and then find out later, like, oh man, maybe that wasn't the best thing for us to do because it kind of detrimentally impacted the people around it. I just don't feel like the current concept as it is going to be the most respectful and user-friendly for the people that live in this area.
Brian, could you go to that traffic circle idea or concept picture? Or if that traffic circle was potentially moved to the west a little bit, where you could, do you like this possible concept, Ms. Flowers?
What I like here is that there is more of a flow and not
Stop and go.
Not a stop and go. Right now, that where the roundabout is a three-way stop, with no street that goes in the southern direction. I fear that with those stop signs there and that addition of that small street, that once you get 3 or 4 cars on that small street and they can't go anywhere, that's cut off. So this to me does feel more residential and community friendly than the hard T with the stop signs.
So my question is, Brian, if that traffic circle was shifted in a westerly direction a little bit, where you don't have to acquire as many properties on the east side?
Well,
Potentially.
that transmission line goes to the north side of Solomon, and that's one of the issues about, we need to
Figure out
be careful where that is, because we don't want, if we can save money by not impacting it, we certainly don't want to put this on top of it by moving it westward. So I don't know how, I don't have enough information to answer the question whether moving it to the west would work, because we're not far enough into the utility issue.
or figuring out how to make the Spalding Street to Solomon Street transition more, since most of the traffic comes through that, figuring out how to run below that so that becomes a seamless transition with people coming into town, and then the other figure out how to meander them into.
Cause like as it stands now, there's, if you're looking at this roundabout where it goes on the Solomon Street, that road is used for several school buses. Large traffic comes down that road, and it's surely, I don't know what the technical term is, but like when they're not supposed to, the big trucks are not supposed to drive on that road. I know there's a technical term for that, but there's already traffic back up. My neighbor has had her mailbox knocked over at least 3 times by an 18-wheeler that had to back up into her yard because he got stuck in the intersection. And so my concern is just that if we increase the stop and go traffic, it just opens up for those 18-wheelers to say, oh, I won't go through the 4-way stop. I'll go on one of these other little small streets to get out to 155, and now you got an 18-wheeler driving down Brady or Milton Street, which certainly isn't authorized to have that type of traffic. So, again, I'm not an expert at this. Oh, pull my mashed juices first. Y'all know how I feel about that. I have to take myself out. So there is, obviously, there are people in the room that have significantly more expertise about this than me. I'm not saying this necessarily coming to you guys necessarily as a commissioner, but as somebody that lives on that street and has a more practical day-to-day experience with the traffic that comes through there. It just so happens that I sit up here with you guys and I am a commissioner, but, so I guess I would just ask that you guys consider it, whatever suggestions, may be available. But I don't want us to make a mistake that significantly alters, the area, the residential area around that intersection.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners?
If you guys would think about that, because I need to keep the consultant moving one direction or the other. And if we're gonna change, we need to start the process of discussing this with GDOT, finding out what kind of process we're gonna work through with them for another approval, but we just need some direction. I was asked to get these options together, and so we need some direction on which way you want to go, whether we stay the course or move to the alternate.
So is, between now and the next transportation committee meeting, is it something that has to be done in the next 6 weeks?
The consultants are working, so yeah, I mean, that's why we kind of put it on the agenda at last minute now, so we could consider what to tell the consultants. You don't meet again for a month, and I mean, it's your call, so we kind of need to know what direction they're leaning towards, so we can.
Susan, can you go back to the original?
Here's a question from Ms. Flowers. Being that they are moving, and as I tell people all the time, this is not my district, but my vote still will count towards it. We're all elected to serve the city, not just our district, so my vote will carry as much weight as yours. Out of these two plans, which one is the less or most attractive to you?
I feel like the roundabouts is most attractive. Like I said, my primary concern is that, like, kind of, if you think about, I live on Spalding Street, there's maybe 3 or 4 blocks to 155, and then like a 2 or 3 block wide area back there that's completely residential.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fearful that one of those streets is gonna start having the bus come down it, or that some of those 18-wheelers leaving UPS are gonna be like, I'm not going to get stuck in that intersection. I'll just turn down this little small street. So I feel like, based on the laws of traffic, like, I don't understand all that, but it's a roundabout is supposed to move the traffic more expeditiously. That was the light went out. Than a stop sign. So given that, I like the roundabout, but I also understand that there's a significant financial difference and that we're far into the process. So I don't want to derail anything, or I don't want to mess anything up. I just also don't want to, in 6 or 7 years, have that entire community say this was the worst thing that ever happened over here in our neighborhood. We did the roundabout in the flat, and I haven't really heard anybody complain about that. I'm just more concerned that past my tenure on the board, because we're not gonna come back and change this intersection in 5 years. And this is what it will be, and that it will have some kind of long-reaching impact on the neighborhood. So I would prefer the roundabout, because I am told to believe that it facilitates a better movement of traffic, but also know that we would be assuming more debt and a higher cost to complete the project.
But if you're gonna change it, now's the time, because we're about too far into it.
Right, I'm not, once again, I'm just not personally impacted by it, but I do respect what Ms. Flowers is saying. I was getting ready to say, before you ever move to the next slide, that we all consider a roundabout, and lo and behold, pops up a roundabout. I like a roundabout idea itself. If this woman to, we're gonna pay the money to impact the community, and maybe in 5 or 6 years, the community come back and say this is the best thing that ever happened for our community is with the roundabout. So there's two ways of looking at it.
There's another, will you put on that other slide, Susan? you see how the road sweeps up from it? That creates, instead of you coming up and taking basically stopping, taking a right, or coming back to the south, stopping, take a left, that moves traffic as well. So there's two things on this new plan. One is the sweeping of that lower road, that new street, and the roundabout. So those obviously take up more right of way, take up more property that is going to have to be acquired, possibly displacements of people. So all that has to come into play. If that option's chosen, we got to go back to the drawing board and get more property. We got to deal with displacement of some residents. And we have no idea the delay on the DOT side of this. Because we didn't want to bring it to DOT until we knew where we were going. No need of stirring, no need of poking that bear, so.
And the match for this is a SPOS funded improvement, and our match is 20%.
And one thing I don't know is what they will say about the cost increase. They may fix their budget and say, if you want to do it, it's local.
Yeah, that's what happened on the changes that we made out here. We had to
So
fund 100% of those changes.
$1.5 million may say, well, you want to do that, it's on you.
Mhm.
Well, there's another component to this that y'all not understanding on this, is that if we do make the change, we'll go to the ARC, ask for an amendment to the TIP. There hasn't been a call for an amendment to the TIP. The TIP is just amended this year. So I'd have to go back categorically and look at when the next call for the amendment is, and I think it's next September. I may be misspeaking unless they have another one, but I can find out. But in order for you to get a cost share, the TIP has to be amended by the ARC. And this cost share could be an 80-20 participation. I would say hopefully that's important. But at the end of the day, they would have to amend it.
They've already amended it once.
Yeah, we would talk to GDOT. If GDOT said, okay, we don't have an issue, then we could go do the amendment to the TIP. And then it would go through the cycle, and then they would go again. So, I mean, I'll just have to call ARC and figure out if we can amend the TIP anytime soon on this.
And I just want to say to you, I certainly don't want you to think that I'm trying to undermine it, which is why I've said several times, like, I'm not an expert in this at all. I live there, but I don't want any of the staff to think that I'm not appreciative of the work. The board for supporting the idea to deal with the intersection in the first place. So I don't want anybody to think that I think I know more. I just know I live on the street and what it's like to live there, but I certainly don't know any of the technical aspects of this. And I want to be respectful of the work that's already been put into it and the processes that have to take place. Yeah, I just wanted to say that. So do we need to tell you guys this morning, or can we like think about it and tell you this evening, or?
I mean, this evening would be fine. I just don't want to delay it over the holidays, and with everything that we've got to do with ARC and GDOT and all that. If you could tell us this evening, that doesn't matter whether this morning or this evening. I just don't want to put it off much longer.
I just want to be fair. Like I got to look at the map already, like at the change. I just want to be fair and not put anybody on the spot. Like, oh, you only just saw it, you gotta. So I don't want to make it like same thing at 9:24.
It's okay, let's each have a chance to kind of digest this today, and let's discuss it tonight.
And to what Dr. Kelly said, I think I guess my feeling on that is the worst thing that can happen is they say no. So if we don't ask, we don't know, they may say we'll do the 20%. But I feel it's something that this board deemed to be necessary and would help the residents, help traffic, and is a slightly better plan that we give it a shot. And if they say no, we already have a plan in place. So it wouldn't hurt me to see that.
Okay, sound good? This evening, we'll try to zero in on a
Yeah, it's
final
not
answer
on the
for you.
agenda for tonight, but if we could just get a consensus,
Yes.
that you can tell us how to move forward tonight. I won't move the agenda or anything, just give me a
You need-
consensus.
You need me to come back tonight?
No, sir. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right, discuss proposed revisions to the current personnel policy. Human Resources Director Stephanie Woods will address. Good morning.
Good morning.
Just to put a side note, make sure you go to her office on Halloween. She is the most festive Halloween spirit. I think I've ever seen.
I'm a little crazy. I have some hard copies. Would anyone like one?
I'll take it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, the good news is that you don't have to make a decision about this today. This is actually intended to just bring to your attention for future discussions, hopefully in January, revisions to the personnel policy. And how this came about is the staff obviously set our goals for the year, and two of the top goals that we came up with was a comprehensive leave plan and a pay for performance plan. So in thinking through that process and what that looked like, everything just kept going back to the personnel policy, especially in regards to leave time. And we do have some issues with leave time. So to address those, it really went back to defining what immediate family is, an extended family in our personnel policy. So I really kind of started there. So what I'm presenting to you is just kind of a snapshot of the proposals that we will be discussing at the workshop in January. And the plan is to, if approved, to get that out to new employees. I think a lot of it is great changes. It's going to help us administratively. It's going to help reduce our sick time. And I also think that I think will be good for employees and the managers to kind of all get on the same page. Sometimes we have departments doing things a little bit different. So obviously we want to do things uniform. So I'll just kind of briefly go through the pages. And again, this is just kind of a brief summary of those changes. The ones that actually do have a real change to them. When you see the policy, there are some smaller edits. It could be grammatical or things may be moved around, so it's not exactly the same. But we'll provide you with a copy of the current policy and the proposed. But these are the main things that we have come up with. The policy is almost completed, but we'll be sending it to the department directors so they can review it as well. We want to make sure when we present it to you that we have a clean version and that it's thoroughly been discussed at our level. The leave committee was comprised of several different directors and managers within the city, and the pay for performance plan was as well. So it's been a very cohesive discussion for several months. It's taken us a long time to kind of come to the consensus on a few things. On the first page of this, you'll see one of the most important things in this is defining immediate family, which is a very, very broad definition right now. And this impacts a whole bunch of different things because leave time goes back to the definition of immediate family. If it's someone taking sick time, bereavement time, it all kind of goes back to how much time you get, if it's extended family or leave or immediate family. So what I'm proposing is that we would take the family medical leave act definition of immediate family, which you see listed here, and that is what we would also go by. Currently, it is very broad. It has uncle, step uncle, grandparent. It's way broad. So this would help, I think, with some of the issues with our sick leave. We do have some sick leave abuse. I know that most companies do, most cities do, but I believe that this will help with that. So that's probably the first and the biggest thing in this policy, I believe. Under Article 2, it's equal employment opportunity and non-discrimination. Sexual harassment is not as thoroughly addressed as we would like it to be. We kind of discovered this year, so we'll be adding that. Under the Article 3, and I've kept the articles the same as they are in the current personnel policy. And Article 3, recruitment and selection, we do want to change it to where any rehired employees disqualify anyone from receiving the referral reward that we have in place, which is a great reward. But we've noticed we have a lot of employees leave for a year, come back, and someone gets referrals. So that's obviously not the intention. No significant changes to Article 4. There are a few changes to Article 5 on the second page on promotion and classification. This addresses the retention bonus. Also addresses reinstatement, which has been a big issue where if someone does leave and come back, that we will not be reinstating whatever sick leave balance they may have had at the time. And we are proposing on-call time and that callback pay. An employee will receive a minimum of 2 hours for each callback. That's in place in some departments, but not all departments, so we're trying to be consistent. Article 6 under separation, we've had a lot of instances where an employee either turns in their notice and they call in sick, or they don't work the notice. So this really kind of addresses, if you want sick pay during your 2-week notice, you're not just going to get it if you call in sick. You have to have a doctor's notice, and we have had a lot of issues with that. Article 7 is currently over drugs and alcohol, and we are really addressing that with alcohol to be included in all those provisions. I do not believe it's a problem in my time here, and I know it's been brief, but we have not suspected anyone's been using alcohol, but better to address it and make sure everyone knows it's not acceptable. We're also adding workplace searches, which we can legally do, but we do need to let employees know we have the right to do that. Article 8, smoking and tobacco, no significant changes. No significant changes under safe workplace. We are proposing in Article 10 travel expenses. We are suggesting moving those amounts up very little. It's an additional $5 for lunch, additional $5 for dinner. No significant changes in Article 11 or 12. And then here's the real meat of the matter on page 3, which is attendance and leave. And this is almost 3 whole pages here. And so this is where we are really defining what the expectations are, and that there are scheduled absences and unscheduled absences, and what our expectations are as far as when you can take a sick day, when you get paid for that day, and when you don't. Also defines if you're out so many times, when we have the right to require doctor's notices, it's disciplinary. The main thing we're trying to address in here, and it has been an issue, unfortunately, is that being at work to do your job is an essential function of the job. That sounds very crazy, but there is a concept out there that if we have sick time, if I have sick time on the books, I'm supposed to use it. It's mine, and I can take it whenever I want it. And that's not how it works. So really trying to address that. That sick time is for when you're truly, truly sick. And we do want you to stay home and recover. We don't want you home at sick. But we also don't want abuse of sick time. And the misconception of, well, if you have it, you're supposed to use it is something we need to change. We've defined consequences in here when we have the right to say something. And again, I think it's just a matter of putting the expectations out there and then having the meat in writing so when we can go to an employee and say, listen, we got an issue with your sick time, and here's what it is. So this really kind of makes it clear. We are proposing on page 4 that the accrual rate slightly goes down. It's currently 3.7 hours. Which basically comes to a day a month, which we thought was kind of excessive, considering that's more sick time than vacation time. So we are suggesting to lower that rate to 2.15 hours, basically comes to 7 sick days a year. I don't foresee anyone really having an issue with this unless it's an abuser. And again, that concept is really out there. If you have it, you're supposed to use it. We're also defining that if you're on a leave of absence, that there are expectations. We cannot drive and see you cutting grass somewhere, you can't be working somewhere else. And again, just a whole bunch of things the committee tried to narrow down in to make it clear what our expectations were. On page 5, we're also addressing holidays and how we're going to handle holidays. We're not changing the holidays, it's the same amount of holidays we've always had, but kind of defining how many holidays you get and what those hours are for the various shifts. So we're literally breaking it out between your full-time 20, 80-hour employees, law enforcement, and fire personnel, since they work different shifts. We are also making it very clear that for you to receive holiday pay, you must work the day before the holiday and after the holiday. And unless it's been previously approved, you're on vacation, or you're sick and you have a doctor's note. Because we unfortunately have quite a bit of a pattern of folks calling in sick the day before or after a holiday, and we believe this will clear that up. On that page, I'm also defining family medical leave. This is 3 pages in the policy where it really goes into detail what the expectations are, and it's for our protection and it's for the employee's protection. But it's very, very brief in the current policy. Article 14, use of city vehicles, no significant changes. Article 15, disciplinary actions. We are proposing to lower the amount of members in the Personnel Review Board. It is challenging to get citizens, HR administrators, city managers to agree to serve on the Personnel Review Board. It is a non-compensatory matter, so we are proposing to lower it from 15 members to 9 members, and from 5 alternate members to 3 alternate members. We do have a current personnel board in place should we need it today, but moving forward, we'd like to have it lowered. No significant changes under grievance procedures or Article 17, employee misconduct. Article 18, this addresses employee participation and development, and this really addresses how the new pay for performance plan would work if that is adopted. That is a separate plan in itself, but this is kind of a summary of it, how it works. And it defines on here what those factors are and what the weighted percentage would be for the different positions. And this is literally where we are addressing what we see as issues. And we're looking at soft skills, quality and quantity of work, attendance, risk and loss, time management, career development, and participation for non-managerial staff. We really want to change the concept of, it doesn't matter if you do a good job or a bad job. If you get a cost of living adjustment, you're going to get the same amount as everybody else. And so that's not an incentive for some people to really do a good job, and that's not what we want. We want to recognize stellar performers, and we believe the way to do that is to focus on the things we consider extremely important. And we put risk loss here because we do have a lot of workers' comp issues, safety issues. The committee really worked hard on this issue, trying to define what the areas are that we can focus on. And so if and when in the future there is a cost of living adjustment proposed, then instead of everyone getting the same amount, their amount would be tied to what their evaluation was. And so we would still stay in the same amount of money that's awarded. It would just be allocated differently based on performance. On page 7, you'll see what the, it's on page 6, you'll see what the managerial staff will be evaluated on at 10%. And these are things that we thought were very important for our leadership staff: accountability, decision-making, leadership, planning and organization, managing people, cost control, soft skills, quality of work, quantity of work, cooperation, and participation. So these would be set performance evaluation forms that we already have in the process. They're formatted, scripted, very easy for managers to do. It's going to give us an overall rating, and then there's a process in our new system that we have in Paychecks where those scores can be loaded. So if and when there is an increase approved, we can easily determine who would get what amount of that. So it's kind of described on page 7, the pay performance plan, how that works, and that it is based on the most recent annual performance evaluation. Article 19, employee privacy in the workplace, no significant changes to that, but social media was a big part of that policy, and social media is just bigger than ever, so we thought we would make it its own article. And then the last article is just the implementation of policy, so no changes to that. We would obviously want to implement the policy as quickly as we could, giving employees sufficient notice if and when approved.
Stephanie, do we continue to evaluate employees once per year? Is that just once a year?
We do it currently one time a year unless they're a new employee or probationary employee, then it's 6 months and then 1 year.
Okay, I have a few questions.
Okay.
The article is discussing, no, not that one. The one where it addresses the possibility of the workplace searches. That was towards the.
That's page 2, drug and alcohol.
It says as part of an investigation, what constitutes an investigation?
That could be, we have reasonable suspicion that someone might have alcohol in their desk because this alcohol is on their breath. It could be investigation of workplace violence. You know, there's a rumor going around that, you know, an employee's got a knife. I mean, it could be, it's basically gonna be because of reasonable suspicion of something.
Okay, is there a process, and I ask this because what is there to prevent just somebody randomly deciding, I'm just gonna go in here and look and see if they got something in it. Like what is there, where is the line drawn between there being an actual reason established for them to go and search through someone's stuff, because many people do have private, personal things in their office, medicine, whatever the case may be, not want us in their business. Where is that line that says, okay, as a department manager, you've been given formal permission to go dig through your stuff versus you feel like going and seeing what they're doing?
Right, and you would have to be a department director to be able to do that, and you would have to have reasonable suspicion. And I can make that very clear in the policy that it is, you must have grounds for reasonable suspicion for this to be able to occur.
Okay, I would be more comfortable with that, so
Okay.
it's not just kind of willy-nilly.
Well, I think your expectation of privacy is far less in an unlocked employee's desk. It would be, say, in a locker, in a locker room where that locker could
Correct.
be secure.
Or a vehicle that employees you see.
Right, but this says they can check lockers, files, employee's desk, office files, locker. So what if they open up the desk and the person's purse is in the drawer? Are they allowed to go in the person's purse because it's in the desk, or? Cause I know women don't like to put
I
their
don't
purse
think
on
you
the
can
floor.
go into the contents of the purse without having fairly strong reasonable
Right.
suspicion.
Right.
But I think you can certainly go through the desk.
So that would be my question, right? If you somebody said, oh, they have a knife, you go through the desk, you open the door, the purse is in there, you say like, well, I would keep my knife in my purse, let me just stick my hand here. So that, I just want there to be some clarity
Sure.
about what the boundaries are.
Okay.
I do think when you're on city property, there is less expectation of privacy
Right.
for sure.
Right.
But I also don't want us to kind of inadvertently violate somebody
I agree.
because we were being overzealous.
I agree. We'll make sure that's very clear.
I mean, I think you need some flexibility there.
Sure.
Being specific is one thing,
Mm-hmm.
but also having the flexibility to manage the city is another. So I think you're gonna have to find that balance.
I'm comfortable with that. I just, like I said, I get, if it's in our desk at the city, then it's our desk at the city, and if there is reasonable suspicion, we should be able to look in it to secure the safety of everyone else. I just don't want it to be a place where it was so open and broad that you really shouldn't have been digging through their stuff, but you said, oh, I was investigating. Again, it may not happen, but the one time that it does.
Well, then it may be ideal to add that before a workplace search can occur, you have to have, the manager has to have approval from the city manager. Alerting them to what's going on, here's what I wanna do. That's a way we can do it as well.
Or
Anything,
human resources, right, or the risk manager.
Director or risk
Do
manager.
we
Right.
use, do we use a form, like a standard form for that process?
We do not currently have a form. I would make one, so.
Yeah, anything to just kind of validate coming back and somebody saying, they went through my stuff and my wallet's gone or my whatever. Okay, we knew they were going. Okay, that's all I wanted.
Well, and Commissioner Flowers, just to provide a little bit more information, we did reach out to Ellerby Thompson on this one in particular because it's not currently in the policy. This isn't a complete addition to it. And they did say that we have the right to do that, but we do have to provide notice. That then gives the employee, they don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy anymore if it's within the personnel policy. But obviously there has to be some kind of reason as to why, because it does implicate their Fourth Amendment right. So we have checked on that with them. Ms. Wood sent it to them with it worded as it is, but I do think it might be better to say instead of the city can search, that a director with approval from HR director or the city manager can search. So we can specify that, but they are okay with it as it is.
Okay, yeah, I don't want it to be lesser, I just want it to be clearer.
Sure.
On the bottom
Let me
page, go ahead.
ask you a question. I saw the other day somebody talking basically about the pandemic and COVID virus and saying that when this thing was over, probably 60% of the workforce was not going to have set office hours. They were not going to come back to work from a centralized location, as we've all done for so many years. And how do you see that figuring into the future of city government? Is that going to be a trend that the government follows as well, or are we going to be the exception from the norm?
I believe government will be an exception from the norm to some extent, because to provide services, the great service we want to provide our citizens, we have to be here to do that. And I think the majority of our staff cannot do that from their home. There are some who can administratively, but electricians have to be out there on the line. Customer service has to be here to help them by person. HR has to be here to enroll new employees, et cetera. So I don't see it as being as powerful as private companies that can in fact do that. I think it may happen in some cases, but I think it will definitely be more administrative.
City attorneys can live off-site and do that, that's my understanding.
There you go.
Bottom of page 4, back on the unused vacation leave, very bottom. So currently, the situation is an employee could build up hundreds of hours of vacation leave and they'd be compensated. Will those current employees be capped at 120, or is this strictly for new hires? If you see a potential, someone that's banked a lot of hours will say, well, I'm out of here, and take their money and run.
Well, it's interesting because we actually just had this occur with someone who had almost 200 hours of vacation time for whatever reason. Currently in the policy now, on January 1st, there's a cap of 120 hours. So our employees know they need to use their vacation time during the year, get it to 120, or they're going to forfeit that time. And so by adding this cap of 120, when you separate employment, that way if we have an employee that's not been vacationing during the year, it's September, all of a sudden they terminate employment, they've built up 200 hours. It's a big financial hit to us. So we've decided, oh, maybe we should cap it at 120 because that's the cap anyway moving into the next year. So if you're leaving employment, instead of us cashing out your 200 hours, we're only going to give you 120. We also think that might encourage employees to take vacation. It's been challenging this year. A lot of employees didn't want to take vacation because they don't have anywhere to go. They can't do anything. They don't want to take their time. But the intent of vacation is to refresh and rewind, and even if you are just staying at home. And so we encourage vacation. It's challenging with workloads and when you're short-staffed, et cetera. But we want our employees refreshed and recuperated for work.
And then on page 6, the line, following his or her date of hire, employee would be evaluated 6 months and then annually. How is the process? Who's responsible to notify directors or managers? Is there a set schedule right now that we do evaluations and things?
Currently, the managers, department directors, they're doing their own. They kind of have their own list, and it's different for everybody of who is due at what time and getting them done. moving forward and with this upgrade we had in our payroll system, that's something I can easily track and pull a report on a monthly basis and help them out by sending them the information. All right, here's everybody that needs a review. So the idea of human resources is to support our directors and notify them of things like that. And we haven't historically been doing that. And I think most managers, department directors, they've done a good job keeping track of it themselves. But that's definitely something that we're working towards, where HR will be more of a help than a hindrance at times.
Any other questions or comments?
I do.
Yes, ma'am.
One more question to the sick leave, which I probably had more questions when I read it the first time. Now they're not all in my brain. First question is, if they're scheduled and unscheduled, what does a person do if they use all of their allotted sick days but are still sick? Is it just unpaid or can you not be sick?
It would be unpaid, or if they have vacation time, it would be vacation time.
Okay, so you get 7 days of, I'm just saying 7 days per year. We just gonna say you're gonna get the flu twice. So you gotta take 5 days in the
We
spring.
don't have the flu anymore since coronavirus came out. No more.
I got a flu shot, we do still have
They don't
flu.
have that anymore.
So you're gonna get a spring flu, a January flu, you're gonna be out for 5. Then you're gonna get a December flu, out for another 5. So those first 7 are covered, it'll be but you don't know, so it's gonna be an unscheduled absence.
Correct.
So those first 7 will be covered. Those last 3, you would have to take vacation days to not get a disciplinary issue for it, or would you say, I don't wanna take my vacation days, I just will not get paid?
Well, the intent is for someone to just not get paid. We don't want to see a pattern of, and that's one thing listed in here. If someone's trying to use vacation instead of sick,
Right.
that's addressed in here, because the fact is, and we're sorry that people get sick, but if you're sick all the time and can't come to work, it's a problem. Someone has to do your job.
Mhm.
So yes, they would use their 7 sick days and they could use 3 vacation days if they get paid, or they would not be paid for it. Now, if it's a consecutive illness, hopefully the person has purchased short-term disability, which would kick in after 14 days of an absence, and that's a voluntary benefit product that we offer.
Okay. Then my other question is, I only have a brief familiarity with FMLA. I know there's something like intermittent FMLA. So let's say someone has a chronic condition and they're looking at 2 days a month where they're incapacitated. They've exhausted the sick leave, so that's gonna be, what's 2 times 12, 24. They've exhausted the sick leave, they've got these other, how do they then manage that? Is FMLA an option? Because I think what you said, like the average person comes to work, it's fine, there's not really an issue. But real life happens, and I would just like to know how we manage someone who gets a cancer diagnosis or who has something that is going to take them out of the loop for a while.
If they are on qualified family medical leave, meaning they've provided all the necessary documentation from their physician, we have what we needed on our end from HR, then that is considered a qualified leave. So that's not going to count against them. If they have sick time, then to be paid for that absence, they would use sick time, or they would use vacation time. If they're out for an extended period, if it falls into short-term disability, that would compensate them, falls into long-term disability, or even if it's workers' compensation. But family medical leave can be either paid or unpaid. It just protects that person's job for up to a 12-week period, and generally longer, at least until it's case by case. As far as an intermittent, that would be the same thing. An intermittent, I need a day each month because of this disability, and as long as we have the documentation that we need, we would not count that against them. And they would plan on how they use their sick time so they're paid for those absences. And we have had it where someone just needs, once a month, they need 4 hours of sick time to go get treatment for this. And so they plan, all right, I want to use 4 hours sick day each month to cover this.
Okay, I got one more question about this, guys.
Let me point out too, that sick time is cumulative, so you get 7 days a year, but if you don't use your entire 7 days, you can carry it over. So it's not 7 days per year, it's cumulative.
How many sick days can you bank? 120 hours?
480 hours.
480
Or
hours.
80, okay.
And we
So-
have a lot of employees with that much sick time.
Okay. So then this leads me to my final question. Well, it's a two-parter, sorry. So in here, it says, it talks about physician certification to nullify some of the, when we say certification, are we meaning a doctor's note, or are we talking about some more stringent document?
It is actually a Department of Labor form, and it is called healthcare provider form for family medical leave. It's not just a doctor's note, it's a 4-page document that lists out, the doctor completes it, and it has the employee's name, what the incapacity is, how long the period is projected to be, what the issue is. It's got all sorts of medical information, and that information only comes to Human Resources. So it's because it's obviously protected health information, but it is a separate, it's just not a simple doctor's note. It's a 4-page document.
So if no sick leave will be granted to any employee without a physician certification, do they have those at the doctor's office, or I'm supposed to know how to print the paper out and take it back and get it filled out?
If you're gonna be out for an extended period of time, and most employees know this now, all they have to do is call us in HR, send us an email. Hey, I'm fixing to have a baby, I need to have some time out, and we provide them the forms and walk them through the process.
But this is, that physician certification is not even really extended. It says if an employee has absences of 3 or more consecutive working days, sick leave will not be paid to the employee unless the employee provides a physician certification. So if I get the flu and I'm out for 5 days, I gotta go and get this 4-part paper filled out for y'all to pay me?
That is a doctor's note specific to sick leave. Family medical leave, if it's a family medical leave
Not
event,
family medical
that's a
leave.
different form.
So under this regular attendance and leave, when this says physician certification, is that a regular doctor's note, or is that a more stringent?
That is a regular doctor's note.
Okay, so just when I go and they say, hey, don't go back to work for 4 days, and they write
It's
me
a
little
doctor's
paper,
note.
that's what I'm
Yes.
bringing.
Yes.
Okay,
Family medical leave is where it's the certified healthcare provider form. And I didn't paste the family medical leave policy in here because it is very long.
right. Okay, and my last part of that question is where we have the consequences, disciplinary measures up to and including termination will resort for the following. Can some of these be negated if you have physician certification / doctor notes? So such as, requesting to, when an employee consistently has a low sick leave balance. I can see where that looks like a clear abuse, if like all you're doing
Correct.
is using your sick leave. But if they could come back and say, well, I've got doctor's notes for 4 of the times I had to call out, does that negate them being disciplined for it, or how does that work?
Not necessarily, because just because you have a doctor's note you're still an unscheduled absence, most likely. So there reaches a point where you can have 20 doctor's notes a year, but you're not at work. And so that's where it's an essential function of the job.
Okay, so then, but we go back to the cancer patient.
Correct, but that's family medical
But
leave.
what if they don't take family medical leave? What if they're not going to get a treatment? What if they just wake up and feel like crap because they had a treatment 2 days ago and it's like, I just can't go today, I'm sick. How is that managed? And I say that because to me, and I'm asking so many questions because y'all know I go to work, I still got a regular job up here with sick leave, so I got questions. Is you can be sick and unable to do your job, but not on the floor incapacitated at your house. A migraine will
Correct.
take you out. And so my question is yes, you need to come to work. No question about that. This is your job, you need to come to work and do it. But in real life, every illness isn't something that's blatant or obvious that somebody would say, oh, you broke your arm, I understand why you're not coming. I have really bad allergies, so I don't like to go out of my house in March or April. I can barely breathe. So for someone who has something that's just kind of a run-of-the-mill illness where they don't feel good, how do we then manage that part of it if they do have doctor's notes? I had 4 sinus infections this year. So I went to the doctor every time. He was like, look, you know what, you don't need to go to work for the next day or two. I'm gonna write you out, it's all good. Now, that would have given me a low sick leave balance.
Right.
But it would have been legitimate sicknesses
Right.
that I had doctor notes for. So would I have still been subject to the disciplinary measures, even though all of it was legitimate?
Could be, because if we hire you to come to work every day. If you're out 30 days a year, even though you have a doctor's note, you're not here to do your job 30 days a year. And we do have the right to discipline you for that, even if you have a doctor's note. Now, if you're on a qualified family medical leave of absence, we do not.
Mhm.
And the one thing that isn't specifically listed in here is that a sickness is consecutive. So if you're out a week, say you're out a week with the flu, then that's gonna be considered one unscheduled absence,
Mhm.
5 consecutive days.
Okay,
But that was an unscheduled absence. Now, a scheduled would be, a scheduled sick day, I'm taking the day off for outpatient surgery, that's a scheduled sick day. The issue is really unscheduled sick days.
okay. All right, that's all the questions I got right now.
Any other questions?
I do have a little
Yes, ma'am.
question about it and hold this. Do we still have the program where employees can donate sick time to the, is that, are we gonna continue with that?
We are. And I think that once I provide you with the copy of the policy as it is today and the new policy, so you can compare back and forth. I'm sure you'll have a lot more questions. But we try to keep as much the same as we could. We're really just trying to address the fact that we need you here to do your job.
Thank you for
Any other
everything.
questions? Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Thank you.
Final item is to consider executive session. This is pursuant to OCGA section 5014-3B2 for the purpose of discussing or deliberating on the employment, compensation, hiring, disciplinary action, or dismissal, or periodic evaluation or rating of a public officer or employee and pursuant to OCGA for section 5014-21 for the purpose of consulting and meeting with legal counsel pertaining to pending or potential litigations, settlement claims, administrative proceedings, or other jurisdictional action brought or to be brought by or against the agency or any officer or employee, or in which the agency or any officer or employee may be directly involved. Do we have a motion for the executive session?
I make a motion.
Mrs. Murray with a motion. Ms. Ward with a second. All in favor, please say aye. Go back. Thank you, staff, for your hard work and commitment. We don't see you tonight. Merry Christmas.
Talking about that clock, right?